In the early days of World War II, the United States held a certain confidence, maybe even a bit of arrogance, about its technological superiority. Many believed Japanese aircraft were just cheap imitations of Western designs. This perception was shattered on December 7, 1941. During the attack on Pearl Harbor, American pilots encountered a new, terrifying opponent in the sky, the Mitsubishi 6M0. This sleek, fast, and incredibly agile fighter plane ran circles around anything the Allies had. The wake-up call was brutal. The era of the Zero had begun, and it would dominate the skies of the Pacific for a terrifyingly long time. Before the war even started, a man named Clearly Chennault, who was advising the Chinese Air Force, tried to warn the Americans. He had seen the Zero in action and knew exactly what it was capable of. He sent detailed reports back to Washington, describing a fighter with unmatched maneuverability, a blistering climb rate, and an astonishing range that allowed it to escort bombers deep into enemy territory. His warnings, however, fell on deaf ears. The American military establishment simply couldn't believe that Japan could produce such a sophisticated weapon. They dismissed his reports, confident in their own Curtiss P-40 Warhawks and Grumman F-4F Wildcats. This overconfidence would prove to be a deadly mistake for many Allied pilots. When the Pacific War erupted, the reality hit hard. In the skies over the Philippines, Southeast Asia, and the Pacific Islands, the Allied pilots found themselves completely outclassed. The Zero was a dogfighting master. It could turn on a dime, climb almost vertically, and dance around its opponents with graceful lethality. American and British pilots, trained in traditional dogfighting tactics, were shot down in alarming numbers. They would try to engage the Zeros in turning fights, only to find the enemy slipping onto their tail with ease. The early encounters were a massacre. Morale plummeted as pilots realized their planes were simply not up to the task. The Zero seemed invincible. The statistics from this period are staggering. At its peak, the Zero achieved an almost mythical kill-to-loss ratio of 12-1. 12 Allied planes shot down for every 1 Zero lost. It was an unprecedented level of dominance. Pilots who survived encounters with the Zero described it with a sense of awe and fear. They knew that getting into a classic turning dogfight with a Zero was a suicide mission. The Allied High Command was forced to rethink everything. A new tactical doctrine was born out of desperation, the boom and zoom. Pilots were ordered to avoid turning fights at all costs. Instead, they were to use their aircraft's superior weight and diving speed. The strategy was to dive on a Zero from a higher altitude, make a single firing pass, and then use that speed to climb away, resetting for another attack. It was a less glamorous way to fight, but it was the only way to survive. Japan knew they had a war-winning piece of technology, and they guarded its secrets obsessively. Zero pilots were under strict orders. If their plane was damaged, and they had to make a forced landing in enemy territory, they were to destroy it at all costs. The goal was simple: prevent the Allies from ever getting their hands on a complete, flyable Zero. Every pilot carried tools and sometimes even explosives to ensure their aircraft would be nothing more than a smoldering wreck if capture was imminent. This secrecy worked for a while, keeping the Allies in the dark about the specific design features that made the Zero so formidable. They knew it was good, but they didn't know **Y**. The first near miss for the Japanese came just hours after the Pearl Harbor attack. Petty Officer Shigenori Nishikaichi, his Zero damaged, crash-landed on the Hawaiian island of Niihau. The islanders were initially unaware of the attack. Nishikaichi, with the help of a few local Japanese-American residents, tried to destroy his plane and his papers. A tense week-long standoff known as the Niihau incident followed, which ended tragically. But crucially for the Japanese, before he was killed, Nishikaichi managed to burn his plane. The Allies recovered the wreckage, but it was too badly damaged to reveal the Zero's deepest secrets. It was a close call, but Japan's technological advantage remained safe, for now. Then, on June 4, 1942, during an attack on Dutch Harbor in the Aleutian Islands, a single moment of bad luck for Japan changed the course of the air war. Flight Petty Officer Tadayoshi Kogo was flying his Zero when it was hit by ground fire. The damage was minor, just a leaking oil line, but it was enough. Following procedure, Koga decided to make an emergency landing on the nearby Okuten Island, which was designated as an emergency recovery point for a Japanese submarine. He lowered his landing gear and prepared to set down on what he thought was a solid, grassy field. But it wasn't grass. It was a mesquite bog. As the wheels touched down, they dug into the soft ground, and the Zero flipped over onto its back. The impact was violent, instantly killing Koga. But his airplane, aside from the flip position, was almost completely intact. The downed Zero lay undiscovered in the remote bog for over a month. A U.S. Navy patrol plane finally spotted the wreckage in July. A recovery team was dispatched, and they were stunned by what they found. On July 12, 1942, the U.S. Navy carefully extracted the aircraft. It was a delicate operation, but they managed to pull it from the mud without causing any further damage. This wasn't just a pile of wreckage like the Nihao Zero, this was a complete, repairable aircraft. The Okuten Zero, as it came to be known, was carefully loaded onto a barge and shipped to the Naval Air Station in San Diego, California. The Allies finally had their prize. The Zero's days of mystery were numbered. Back in San Diego, engineers and test pilots went to work with a sense of urgency. They meticulously repaired the aircraft, piecing together the puzzle of its design. When it was finally airworthy, they began a series of exhaustive flight tests. And what they discovered was game-changing. They confirmed the Zero's incredible maneuverability at low speeds and its phenomenal rate of climb. But they also found its weaknesses, its fatal flaws. The tests revealed that the Zero's controls became extremely heavy at high speeds, making it slow to roll. It also performed poorly in a dive, as its carburetor would cut out under negative G-forces. And most importantly, they discovered it had virtually no armor protection for the pilot or self-sealing fuel tanks. It was built for performance, sacrificing all durability. Armed with this critical intelligence, the Allies completely rewrote their playbook. The information was distributed to every pilot in the Pacific. They were now taught precisely how to exploit the Zero's weaknesses. The instructions were clear: never dogfight a Zero. Always try to engage from above. If a Zero is on your tail, roll and dive to the right. He won't be able to follow you. This knowledge, combined with the introduction of new, more powerful American fighters like the Grumman F-6F Hellcat and the Vought F-4U Corsair planes designed specifically to beat the Zero, spelled the end of its dominance. The Hellcat, for example, could outdive, outrun, and outgun the Zero, and it was built like a tank. The kill ratios in the Pacific began to dramatically reverse. By 1943, the hunters had become the hunted. The legendary Zero, once the undisputed king of the skies, was now just another target. The capture of that one plane on a remote Alaskan island had unlocked the secret to its defeat and helped turn the tide of the war in the Pacific. Thanks so much for watching. If you found this piece of history as fascinating as I do, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more stories like this. See you in the next one.